Welcome everyone to Wrasslin Raw!
You're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when the World Wrestling Federation developed a little bit of an attitude. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
So, sorry, no quote this week, but I do have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Did either one of you trip over a gravestone making your way to the podcast tonight?
It just appeared out of nowhere. I was on my way to the podcast, and there's this fucking gravestone sitting there all of a sudden.
I smacked my shins right off it.
Joe Giammatteo.
Yeah, I'm right here, babe.
I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett, and we're going to examine WWE history, one episode of Raw at a time. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on September 23rd, 1996. This Raw was recorded at the Hershey Park Arena in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and features Jim Ross, Kevin Kelly, Jerry Lawler, and a rotating cast on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
All right, then, let's get into it. Who wants to lay bets that we're going to start this episode talking about any one of the amazing matches that happened last night at the Mind Games pay-per-view?
Yeah.
Well, fuck
okay.
you. That's not going to happen. You know what we are going to talk about? That's Razor and Diesel down there. That's Razor and Diesel. I told you so. I told you so. Yeah, fuck Mind Games. Doesn't matter.
That's done and over.
Yeah, that's in the past. We can pretend like it never happened. Also, hey, by the way, the Intercontinental title is going to go to somebody here pretty soon.
Well, yeah, and surely that's going to be the last match of the evening, right?
Right. I mean,
Makes sense.
it's the second best title in the company, so you would think.
In the tag team belts, they don't even count.
Right,
So,
right. They're pretty much a gimmick anymore.
as we'll see later.
Well, Mr. Perfect is going to join commentary here. Ooh, that puts us up to a 4-man booth to start out the night as we go into our first match of the night. Marc Mero with Sable defeats Farouk with Sonny by pinfall in 14 minutes and 50 seconds to win the WWF Intercontinental title. This is the final match in the tournament held after Ahmed Johnson's kidneys had to vacate the title. Sonny and Farouk are out first here, and they have to step around a buried alive tombstone that's planted in the middle of the entryway. My first note going into the first match, Jesus, there is a tombstone in the way. People are trying to come out here.
I just love how everyone, is surprised by it and has to, stop and stumble around it. It just makes everyone look awkward coming out.
Yeah, it's like the Wayne's World advertising.
Yeah.
And then comes out Sable, followed by Marc Mero after that, and things get mild. The moves are telegraphed at the start, Farouk showing that he can work with the best of them. Unfortunately, the mild man isn't the best of them, and his attempts at speedy moves just slows this match down. Of course, Mero runs through his routine, including the clothesline to the outside and the suicide plancha, as Kevin Kelly has been calling it. Just as nothing of interest was going on in the ring, we got a phone call from Ahmed Johnson, which even included the King making a Jake Roberts joke. To his credit, that did elicit a great response from Ahmed about kicking the King's ass, so that went well. But, I just thought it was funny that not only is the Intercontinental title on the line in the first match of the night, we also got a phone call and a Jake Roberts joke in it, so these are what are called context clues, kids. Farouk's Samoan drop from the corner looked great because it really looked like it hurt the mild man. Looked like the mild man got a little twisted at the end of that. Pat Patterson was refereeing this match. I had completely forgotten about that because so far there has been nothing special at all about this. In my notes, I saw nothing here that was remarkable. When Sunny choked the mild man on the ropes, Sable was screaming her face off again there, but it was kind of funny to see Sunny getting ejected as a result. Mero setting up the backslide pin was slow and tedious. Farouk's wrestling is believable in every way. That's one of the best things I can get out of this match. Farouk doesn't look like anything he's doing is a work, and that's a great thing. Contrary-wise, nothing about Mero looks legitimate. JR drops some extra news that, along with Razor and Diesel, we're going to get news about Double J Jeff Jarrett tonight. What the fuck? That's just out of nowhere. I had to sum things up into one line here. If I noted every bad thing about the mild man, we would be here forever. And then Sunny comes down. She has no business whatsoever being there. And conveniently, this time she had a purse that she slapped down in the ring before getting into a shouting match with Sable. And you can tell the fans really want to see these two go at it because the biggest pop of the fucking match was for Sable and Sunny starting to slap at each other. Of course, that's the distraction that is needed for Farouk to use the purse. Mero reverses it, though, and puts Farouk down. And rather than just fucking pinning him right then, Mero drags Farouk's big ass over to the corner to set him up for the wild thing.
And then readjust him 3 times.
Yeah, it took like 90 minutes to set it up.
Wait, no, you got to come over an inch more.
That gets us the pin and the 3 counts, and as a result, the mildest Intercontinental Champion ever. Mero praises God for his victory when he probably should have been thanking Sunny and the brick in her purse. Lawler actually pointed that out right after I made that note. And to summarize, this was absolutely disgusting, all of it. I love Farouk, but even he wasn't able to pull this match out. This thank you speech from Mero at the end, this fucking Lou Gehrig, luckiest man in the world bullshit, it has officially burned through whatever patience I was trying to reserve for Marc Mero. I fucking hate him now. Joe, what did you think of this match?
Well, let me ask first, do either of you remember Marc Mero as Intercontinental Champion?
No.
Just barely.
I wish I could have kept it that way.
Yeah, but it makes me think that maybe this is just he's like a transitional champion and maybe won't have it for very long, because I certainly don't remember it either.
Hunter is going to have it soon, right?
Yeah, Hunter at some point, and then Rocky Maivia gets it later, and this is not very exciting. Your Intercontinental Championship, and it's the first match. And yeah, it's just not very exciting. I don't really have any notes about the match itself, other than the wild thing taking forever to set up. Notes about Pat Patterson's really slow 3 counts. All of his counts actually were very slow. I don't know what that was all about, but it seemed like Kevin Kelly was having a hard time with it too. And then the slapping fight and Pat Patterson throwing Sunny out was nice. I liked that. Got a nice response from the crowd, but then she comes back and Pat Patterson just doesn't give a shit. So I don't know what that was all about.
Well, she had a purse. Clearly, it's someone different.
Yeah. At the end of this, they really tried to make it into like a real sport thing. Bartlett, you mentioned the Lou Gehrig type speech. I loved it when he said, "Sable, this is as much yours as it is mine," talking about the belt, which is very true. Vince probably made him say that. He probably scripted it for him.
Sad.
He thanks his Lord and Savior because Jesus did not want Farouk to win.
Yeah.
Good thing he thanked his Lord and Savior there. The phone call with Ahmed Johnson, like why? Why are you putting that in there? I don't get it.
Like a jobber match
yes.
on this
yeah.
Intercontinental Championship round of this tournament.
Yep.
Treat it like a jobber match.
Ahmed kept referring to Kevin Kelly as Babe, which I thought was hilarious.
I just kept on thinking of the pig, Babe.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, those were like the most entertaining parts to me. But the match itself was just very forgettable.
Yeah, very forgettable. And you pointed out, we see Pat Patterson at the beginning, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. Pat Patterson's here. And then I forget about it until Kevin Kelly points out his terrible slow 3 count that Marc Mero looks horrendous kicking out as well. Like, I almost wonder if that slow 3 count was partly Mark's fault because he didn't kick out in time. And Pat was just like, oh, I can't count yet. Oh, there, okay.
Come on, Mark, kick out.
I think this maybe is one of the worst mild man matches we've seen.
Yeah.
He botched shit left and right. I don't know if he was just super nervous because he knew he was going to get the belt at the end of this, but at the beginning, I almost was going to give him credit. His reverse head scissors looked pretty good, and Farouk sold it pretty well. But then immediately he does a very ugly looking crucifix that just looked terrible, just absolutely terrible. And I'm glad Farouk only gave him a 1 count for his horrible effort. A little bit later, Mark goes for what they called the Mero salt.
Yeah.
At first, it looked kind of impressive. He was on the top rope. He jumped and did a 180 in the air onto the turnbuckle and then jumped off. But then when he landed, it just didn't look graceful. And that's how all of his high-flying moves come off. It's like he gets 8/10 of the way there and just can't finish that final amount. He can't cross the finish line and actually make it look good. Farouk did all he could to make this look at least decent when he was in control, trying to brutalize Mark here. There were a couple slams. There were a few slams at him that looked really great, including that Samoan drop off the second rope. The way he walked up the turnbuckle with Mark on his back, he looked like a fucking beast. I mean, that's the only way I could explain it was, wow, the way this guy was just manhandling him. But I know we sound like a broken record, and I have talked to a few people who maybe said we're going a little hard on the mild man.
Really?
I don't think that is the case, because another point, Farouk goes for a hard clothesline, and Mero sells it about a second too early and starts turning his head before Farouk connects with him. Little things like that through the entire match. He just comes off as rough around the edges in the ring. Joe, you said you found a couple things that you were able to like from commentary. I found it in the crowd. There was a point where Farouk had Mark in a headlock. Perfect timing. There was a fan holding up a sign right behind him that said, "We love rest holds." We have the distraction with Sonny. I think this might be the first time we hear the King say, "Cat fight, cat fight, cat fight."
Yeah.
But all around you used a good word, forgettable. A very forgettable, not just match, but this is supposed to be for the Intercontinental belt that has been vacant for well over a month. And this is how they finish it. That's a shame.
Yeah, 100% agreed on that. Mero it's strange because I think he has just gotten into a rut of doing, well, obviously he's been in a rut this entire time. He's in the fucking Sable rut. He's in the suicide plancha rut. He's in the 3 clotheslines and out rut. His whole fucking career is a rut at this point. And it seems like the Intercontinental Championship is barely going to make a blip in that pattern. Like, he needed to work with Farouk here, and Farouk is a brawler. Farouk is a badass. He's a slow, methodical, stiff worker, and Mero could not adjust his speed to match Farouk. I think that was the one overall problem throughout this match is Mero was trying to go 90 miles an hour, whereas Farouk was sitting back at 75, and they could have maybe tried to meet at 80, but it didn't look like that was happening.
Maybe that helmet threw him off.
Yeah. And that speech at the end, you both pointed out just how absurd it was. He's there thanking his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for it all. And, he should have been thanking Sable. Because that's the only reason he has that belt. The belt is on him because Sable exists.
Well, that and because Sonny brought a brick down to the ring. Apparently God loves a cheater.
I'm not talking about even in story kayfabe. I'm saying the reason Marc Mero has the belt is because Sable.
Yeah, and he cheated with a brick.
He did. He cheated with a brick. The baby face.
Yeah, but
to win the tournament.
The one thing that could maybe come out of all of this as a positive is hopefully people see this and realize that fucking helmet doesn't help Farouk at all. Like, it should have protected him from the brick, right? That's what helmets do.
Yeah.
You would have thought.
All right, well, let's move on from there. We have some very exciting things to look at here, namely backstage. Razor and Diesel have their own cartoonishly labeled dressing room, complete with a cartoonish "Keep Out" sign. Oh my God. Let's talk Double J Jeff Jarrett, the roadie, Shawn Michaels, and the Intercontinental title, which, correct me if I'm wrong, that was the last time we saw Double J and the roadie, right? Whenever Double J lost it to Shawn Michaels.
And then they booked it out of the building.
Yeah.
Jarrett came back, though. Remember that Ahmed Johnson thing that was real quick?
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Where
right.
Ahmed broke his back in his first match back. And
Ahmed almost paralyzed him, and yeah, he had to go away for a little bit.
And he decided to not come back even to the WWF after that.
Yeah.
That's why this is happening, because Jarrett recently signed with WCW. So they're doing this whole exposed thing because they're obsessed with WCW.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's not all bad for him, right? He had his hit song. Well, tonight Double J is going to get exposed. Take a brief pause to check on Doc Hendricks backstage. He's backstage with Marc Mero. Marc Mero is being congratulated by the rest of the stars back there, including Bob Holly, Barry Horowitz, and Freddie Joe Floyd, a true cast of heroes and stars there. But Vince McMahon took a very special look at Double J Jeff Jarrett. I'm sure he did once he got the news about WCW. So let's switch back over to that topic again. This was a documentary-style video package highlighting the fact that Double J is country music's version of Milli Vanilli. That's right, Double J never sang the song. He never recorded it. But next week we'll have the man that was ripped off, the real Double J. Before we move along, I clearly remember this from back in the day. I've been waiting for it ever since Double J was first introduced, this whole real Double J angle. But what I didn't remember was the timeline of things and how long it's taken for us to get there and all the stops along the way. Joe, like you said, Ahmed Johnson breaking Double J's back before he gets put out, and just so many things about this that are almost fresh to me now. But Joe, what did you think about the fact that we haven't mentioned Double J once since that injury, but now he's not only on our screens again in a very prominent way, like nothing ever happened?
Yeah, it is just completely out of nowhere. And it's very TMZ-ish, like very tabloid style work here that they're doing. Jeff Jarrett, his lip syncing that he did at that In Your House event was not bad, but they changed. Right. It seems like they sped up the track here to make it look bad.
Yeah.
To show that he was Milli Vanilli-ing his performance. So yeah, this is just very strange.
That's the only thing I had written down was I remember distinctly pointing out what a good job he did lip syncing in that pay-per-view. And then they're showing us this video saying, no, you're not remembering correctly. It was completely out of sync and you just didn't notice it. Pretty astonishing how dumb they are expecting us to be here.
Yeah. I can't lie, though. I'm excited about this. Like I said, this whole real Double J angle is up there in my nostalgic memories, along with the single greatest heel turn in the history of professional wrestling. Like, this was a milestone of my fandom, because I was a pretty big Double J mark back in the day, and hearing that this was about to happen and come to fruition was pretty awesome back then.
The real Double J angle I'm really looking forward to. Just, it was a bit absurd, their setup for it.
Well, yeah. We're going to go now, speaking of absurdities, we're going to go now into our next match. The British Bulldog and Owen Hart defeat the Bodydonnas, Skip and Zip, by submission in 4 minutes and 25 seconds. And I am very sad to report that it's finally happened. Skip is our jobber of the week. Take it, Ryan.
Thank you, Bartlett. Skip is this week's jobber. Skip was born Christopher Barrett Candido, I never knew that, on March 21st, 1972 in Edison, New Jersey. He was trained by Larry Sharp at the famous East Coast wrestling school, the Monster Factory, and he used only 2 ring names, a slight variation of his real name, Chris Candido, and Skip. He made his debut in New Jersey for the Monster Factory in 1986. In 93, Skip joined ECW, where he formed a stable called the Suicide Blondes with Johnny Hotblood and Chris Michaels. They wrestled under the Freebird rule, and the Suicide Blonde trio had 2 stints as ECW Tag Team Champs. They vacated the ECW Tag Team belts in July of 93 when Candido left the promotion. Skip spent 93 and the beginning of 94 with Jim Cornette's Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and the rest of 94 with NWA, winning the NWA World Heavyweight Championship in a 10-man tournament after the title was left vacant by former NWA champ Shane Douglas. A few other familiar names in the tournament were Al Snow, Dirty White Boy, and Tracy Smothers.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Nice pack of winners there. In 1995, Skip signed with the WWF. His first match was on January 9th, 1995, defeating the king of jobbers himself, Barry Horowitz. Candido was renamed Skip, and his girlfriend and manager was renamed Sunny. They debuted on WWF television in May of 95 as a pair of arrogant fitness gurus who would mock their opponents. Despite Skip's ring skills and the audience's fascination with Sunny, the Bodydonnas gimmick struggled to ever gain a foothold with the fans. They tried a few different partners with Skip, first Rad Radford very briefly, then Tom Pritchard as his partner Zip. Ultimately, the WWF decided to remove Sunny as their manager, causing the Bodydonnas to fall even further in the minds of most fans. By the time 96 rolled around, Skip and the Bodydonnas were being used mainly as cannon fodder for whichever team currently held the tag team belts. Skip, seeing the writing on the wall, quit the WWF, this being his last match for the company, the one we're about to go over against Owen Hart and the Bulldog. He would re-sign with ECW in October of 1996. Although an excellent ring worker, sadly, his time at the WWF is mostly remembered for the backstage drama involving his girlfriend/fiancée Sunny and Shawn Michaels.
Man, it's just so rough.
It's true. It's not made up.
That's all you can say about it, is just that it's true. It's damn true. It's not made
damn
up.
True. Skip stayed at ECW until December of 99. While there, he was part of Shane Douglas's rib at the Four Horsemen stable, and their own stable called the Triple Threat, with him, Candido, and Bam Bam Bigelow. Later, Skip, or Candido at that time, would team up with Lance Storm, and together they held the ECW tag belts for over 6 months. In 2000, Skip joined WCW, but only stayed with the company for a few months. While there, he briefly brought back the Triple Threat stable with Douglas and Bam Bam Bigelow before leaving in June of 2000. The next 5 years, Skip wrestled for New Japan Wrestling as well as jumping between various indie promotions before signing with TNA in 2005. Shortly after joining TNA at the Lockdown pay-per-view on April 24th, 2005, Candido fractured both his tibia and fibula and dislocated his ankle during a steel cage match. He underwent surgery the next day to have titanium plates and screws inserted into his leg. On April 28th, just a few days later, Candido fell ill and his condition worsened during the day. He collapsed in the evening and was rushed to the hospital where he was diagnosed with pneumonia. The doctors drained his lungs, however, it was too late, and tragically, Chris Candido died on April 28th, 2005 at the young age of 33. In 2005, TNA held the Chris Candido Memorial Tag Team Tournament, and in 2009, he was inducted into the Hardcore Hall of Fame in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Chris Candido's record is 424 wins, 537 losses, and 47 draws. Although Chris was no slouch in the ring, the numbers agree with me. Here in the WWF, he was treated as a jobber.
Indeed.
Well, unfortunately, you are correct.
Crazy, he was only 33 when he died. It's so sad.
Yeah.
Because he had a pretty lengthy career and still was only 33.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, that puts him at what, 22, 23 here? 24, something like that?
Yeah. I thought he was older than that. I thought he was at least in his late 20s, if not early 30s here.
Well, this match just goes to show that he was better off leaving, I think, going to ECW.
For sure.
I was always a fan of the triple threat. No gimmicks needed, Chris Candido. Well, here in the match, the new tag team champions are there with their new manager, Clarence Mason. I do have to note that it's great to have gold around Owen Hart's waist here. Clarence Mason will be joining commentary, once again taking this up to a 4-man booth. And it's confirmed here that Jim Cornette signed off on giving the tag team to Clarence Mason, and Mason was pretty entertaining here in discussing that with commentary. JR was getting just a touch obnoxious with it. Hopefully that doesn't continue throughout the night, but hey man, whatever. Owen and Zip together in the ring looked pretty good, but then some ECW guys showed up again. There was this brief ECW chant, a little minor kerfuffle there off to the side. I saw Taz, and I want to say I saw Perry Saturn, too. I could be wrong about that. I just caught a quick glimpse of a ripped motherfucker with a mohawk, and at that time, I think that would be Perry Saturn. And then split screens galore. The second one being Jim Cornette cutting a promo on Clarence Mason, which was great up until Cornette states that he and Vader will take on Shawn Michaels and Jose Lothario in a tag match on Raw next week.
Just when we thought we escaped it.
Yeah, I really thought that it was done with.
At least it didn't ruin that last pay-per-view.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just start letting the old litter box start building up now for that one. Also, Savio Vega is going to be taking on Razor Ramon on Raw next week. Owens Insiguri on Skip looked great. In case anybody here wanted to talk about what's happening in the ring, they sure as fuck weren't doing it on the television screen there. That Insiguri set up the sharpshooter and the submission victory. I loved Clarence Mason celebrating in the ring with his team. Once again, very animated. Very enjoyable to watch. There's plenty to talk about here. Very little of it is the match. Ryan, what did you think about this?
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. There is not much at all to speak of about this match because, well, it's a tag team match, so we spend the entire time filling us in on every tidbit of news that they could think of that has maybe happened in the last couple weeks. We get the Ecw chant going on. They fill us in about the Cornette situation and him and Mason. When the crowd started chanting ECW and we saw Taz, I did love JR saying about ECW, aren't those the guys that wrestle in a bingo hall?
Yeah.
That was a great line from him. But, perfect timing for Chris Candido to get Jobber of the Week because he got the full Jobber treatment here. We got a match that didn't mean jack shit to anyone, and he had to tap out in the middle of the ring. So they definitely gave him the Jobber goodbye here on his way out the door.
Yeah.
But to be completely honest, I am going to miss Chris, as well as the Bodydonnas. Their gimmick was ridiculous, but I thought they always put in a good show, or at least a serviceable show. They always worked hard. They were both solid wrestlers. So all around, it's a loss to the company. So I'm going to miss them.
Yeah, I agree. The Bodydonnas did some cool tag team moves in this match, but outside of that, this was nothing special. And this is a title match, right?
I do not think so.
Either way, you have your tag champs in a match, and it was kind of shitty.
Yeah.
And it's interrupted by ECW and Taz, which is fine, but have them interrupt TL Hopper versus the Stalker, not a match featuring your tag team champions, which, by the way, Owen Hart was flipping the bird at fans when they were chanting, "We want Taz," which was hilarious. So yeah, seeing that interaction with the crowd was cool. But outside of that, yeah, this was not exciting. And then to make matters worse, we get the announcement of that tag team match. Is it next week? Or
Yep.
So already ruining next week.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to put butts in seats, I'm sure. All right, let's just move it along from here because the less said about that match, the better. We're going to take some time here to review still shots from the main event at Mind Games last night, and nothing much of value was added in that segment other than to reiterate that the Buried Alive match is unsanctioned. The Undertaker, directly after that, though, gives us a video package talking about the scars of his matches and the scars of betrayal as he ambles through some black and white film in a cemetery. Taker has condemned mankind to eternal damnation. Taker is God now, apparently, which means that he was responsible for Mero's win earlier, and I would like to curse him for that. But there's going to be a cemetery constructed for that event. I'm not sure if you guys picked up on that. It's little tidbits. It's not like they repeated it 90 fucking times or anything, but there is going to be a cemetery constructed just for that event. But wait a minute, hold on a second. Speaking of getting buried, Doc Hendricks is backstage being prevented from talking to Razor and Diesel. It's the cartoon door shut in his face. The PlayStation Slam of the Week comes up next in a commercial break. That's brought to us by Crash Bandicoot. And that was Mankind going through the table at Mind Games last night. Vince McMahon gives us a video package to get us all excited about Vader and Cornette versus Lothario and Michaels next week. It will be Raw. Stone Cold Steve Austin joins commentary next. Taking it up to a 4-man booth, he states that he would like to spit on the life, work, and family of Bret Hart. Jesus Christ. That's good shit, pal.
Yeah.
There were a lot of moving parts here in this segment, so we got to pause and ask, Ryan, what did you put down on the new information that we got here?
I mean, we see the Buried Alive update and telling us that a graveyard will be constructed. The vignette that we get with The Undertaker here, I thought it had some good visuals and it was filmed pretty good. And The Undertaker at the end, I thought, cut a pretty good promo. But the way he was walking with the shovel, like it was a walking stick, and trying to viciously stab it into the ground with each step, it just made it look a little bit odd.
It was distracting, yeah.
Yeah, it just came off a little bit odd. But outside of that, it was a pretty strong vignette. Crash Bandicoot for the PlayStation, I certainly remember that. That was brought back a great memory. I did note, though, the slam of the week was the sweet chin music kick to Mankind's face and Mankind body slamming Shawn Michaels through the table. So I guess that would make it the slams of the week, not just the slam of the week. But that's just nitpicking dickbag stuff there.
Yeah.
And Stone Cold, fantastic. Spit on the life, career, and family of Bret the Hitman Hart. Just get the fuck out of here. That was great.
Yeah, it's nice to be reminded that Shawn Michaels and Mankind had a match last night, right?
Yeah.
We're more than halfway through the show, and yeah, those guys had a match. Anyway, Sid and Vader are going to have a match at Buried Alive. Undertaker promo was pretty cool. It was something you'd see in a horror movie. Very well done. Doc Hendricks with Razor and Diesel. Who the fuck cares? It's just they're wearing it out at this point. Yeah, Crash Bandicoot was a great game at the time. Definitely wore that disc out. And the Slam of the Week, yeah, they were great. I mean, these guys had a fucking amazing match.
Yeah.
And it should be featured. Steve Austin, what is with his forehead here? Did you notice how it's like real red?
And swollen too. I think he might have had a dark match where, I don't know, he got smacked with a 2x4 or something.
That's what it looked like. Yeah, he looked like Tommy Boy.
Yeah, not here or here so much.
It was like real red. Like it wasn't cut open, but it was like real red. But yeah, great lines from him. But yeah, again, 4-man booth, like nonstop through the whole episode.
Yeah, Stone Cold and that 4-man booth are going to take us into our final match of the night. The Stalker defeats Hunter Hurst Helmsley by pinfall in 7 minutes and 52 seconds. Hunter Hurst Helmsley came out first, and his valet was quite attractive with no name given. And right off the bat, with the first arm drag takedown, I wish Barry Windham was just Barry Windham and not the Stalker. It's just, it doesn't work. There's nothing about that works. There wasn't anything largely wrong with the action necessarily. I mean, a few times it did look like the Stalker was indecisive on where to go next and where to move his opponent. Stone Cold was pretty funny though, busting Kevin Kelly's balls every chance he got. Kevin Kelly said something about what was coming up next week, and Stone Cold immediately replied with, "Jesus, you're killing me." But wait, here comes Mr. Perfect to probably abscond with Helmsley's valet, and we cut to commercial after a delayed suplex with JR yelling the match is over. Commercial is call into the Superstar line, dial option 6 to find out something about Razor and Diesel. I am so fucking tired of Razor and Diesel already at this point, and we haven't even gotten a good look at them yet. Coming back to the match, it wasn't over yet, despite what JR was telling us. The Stalker has been performing basic moves, and Hunter has been trying to keep a sleeper hold on. That's about the gist of it. I loved Stone Cold asking why the hell Barry Windham has all that paint on his face. We all know who he is. And of course, we finally get to Hunter Hurst Helmsley being distracted by Mr. Perfect taking Helmsley's valet. The distraction puts him into position for the superplex, giving the Stalker the pin and the victory. Joe, I am anxious to hear what you have to say on this match, because I'm sure it will be more interesting than this match and the ongoing angle between Helmsley and Mr. Perfect is.
Well, I hate to disappoint you, but again, I don't have much to say about the actual match itself.
It's already more interesting.
Barry Windham just looks so fucking ridiculous with this gimmick. He has like a Wilfred Brimley mustache, too. And he's got all this fucking face paint on. It just looks so terrible. So Halloween costume-ish.
I'm going as an army guy.
Yeah, it's so pathetic. Hunter is obviously still paying for that curtain call from 4 months ago. Mr. Perfect, this whole thing is making no sense at all. They're making no progress with it. They're just doing the same thing over and over again. Did you hear Steve Austin asking why Barry Windham has face paint on?
Yeah, that was when he said, he's Barry Windham. We all know it's him.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing myself, so... Really just terrible. I can't believe they didn't end the show with this, but this was our last match that we got tonight instead of the Intercontinental Championship. Just makes no sense.
This was much better than the Stalker's debut, which was against TJ Hooker. That was terrible. With Hunter, at least the action wasn't bad, but this gimmick is really bad. This week, the Stalker switched to snow camo. I guess he's camping in Alaska currently. I don't get it why in 1996 they're still putting gimmicks like this on people. I don't get it. The most entertaining thing was Stone Cold on this 4-man booth that we had all night. Every match, someone else would come out and make it a 4-man booth, but it was good to see the fans are starting to get behind Austin, though. Another sign out in the crowd, someone had Austin rules. They're definitely agreeing, just like we are, with what Stone Cold's doing, and I think some of it is why he caught on with people is he just says shit that the fans are thinking. Like, what the fuck is up with Barry Windham? We all know it's him. Take off this fucking paint, you moron. Obviously, Barry Windham isn't the moron here, but he's just calling out how dumb this gimmick is.
Yeah.
And he's right. The stuff with Hunter and Mr. Perfect, it's just getting tiresome at this point. It might have went somewhere if they could have shortened it and maybe wrapped this up a month ago, but it's just going on and same thing week in and week out. So I'm not very excited anymore to see where that's going.
Yeah. There's been no hint whatsoever as to just what the fuck is going on with that. Because let's keep in mind, Mr. Perfect can't wrestle.
Yeah.
The only thing that this could possibly be is it's leading to him introducing somebody that he's managing or something along those lines. Somebody is going to have to come in and wrestle for him, and there's been no hints, nothing. It's just such a waste of screen time. Well, I wish I could say that was the end of things, but It wasn't. Hunter Hurst Helmsley was barely rolled out of the ring when JR is up in there with a microphone and he's ready to talk about Razor and Diesel. But let's interrupt him first. Let's take a look at Mankind real quick. There's a video package that looks like it was filmed in the same cemetery Undertaker was in earlier. I hope they didn't run into each other while filming. But the content and visual here was fantastic. Paul Bearer and Mankind both did an amazing job. The constantly moving camera angle was a teensy bit irritating there, but it did give us great scenes like Paul Bearer staring pop-eyed over Mankind's shoulder. That was just a real neat, quick visual. We go back to the ring with heel JR, and I do say that seriously because this is a departure for JR as a character here. JR is yelling into the microphone, "Can we get to this interview already?" So we go to commercial instead, cutting off JR again. JR yelling into the mic, "No, don't go to commercial!" And we go anyway. Coming back, JR has a personal statement he wants to run by us all first. That being, he's got no loyalty to the WWF. He left the Atlanta Falcons to come to the WWF, and he was received in a fucking toga at WrestleMania 9. JR states that he is the best play-by-play man in the business, which gets a pretty nice pop. I was happy to see and hear people agreeing with him on that. Like I said, JR didn't like his toga at WrestleMania 9. JR didn't like the WWF's reaction to his Bell's palsy. JR doesn't like the overpriced hellhole Connecticut. JR references Vince McMahon getting indicted, but all that's in the past because JR is here now to bring back one of our favorites, the bad guy, Razor Ramon. And there he is. The camera conveniently cuts away from the entrance just as Razor was stepping out. And the camera stuck on Razor's back the entire time going down the entryway and getting into the ring. We got a very wide, backed up camera angle from the hard camera as Razor was getting in the ring and the pyro got set off. JR starts to interview Razor, and we still didn't get a very good look at him up until he gets his first couple words out. And I say first couple words because he doesn't even get a full sentence out. Savio Vega attacks from out of nowhere as we fade to black. Joe, please, what did you think about the way that Raw ended tonight?
So think about the amount of teasing that we got for this.
Forever.
And this
I'm
was
not
the
lying,
payoff. This was the payoff right here. Jim Ross cutting this promo was very interesting to me. It's not good.
It was very interesting, though.
Yeah, it doesn't fit his character or his personality. It came off as, whiny and bitchy. But a lot of it is true stuff that almost like tickled our taints at the Mr. McMahon character before Mr. McMahon ever existed. He talks about his Bell's palsy. He talks about, like you said, coming in with the toga. You listen to Jim Ross now, and he's still bitching about a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, all of these stories, basically.
Yeah, the stuff with Razor and Diesel, it's just so amazing to me. First off, shame on Eric Bischoff and Ted Turner and everybody who, you lost to this. I can't believe you ended up losing to this. And they treat it like it's real, like they actually are treating this like Razor and Diesel. This is not a joke to them. It doesn't come off, to me anyway, that they're treating it like a joke, like they were the Billionaire Ted stuff. This comes off as they are serious. Like Vince actually thinks, I created these characters. I can put anyone in that role and it'll work for me. And I'm going to use it. And it's just really pathetic. Especially to end a show. Like you end a Raw show with this. Like it's unreal.
I will say there was a line or two from JR that made me think that they're not telling us to take it seriously. And it was JR, he just got done bitching and moaning about everything. Then he says, when he introduces Razor, as the fans start to boo as they see the fake Razor, he says, "There, how do you like that?" So it's basically a, fuck you. I've been telling you for weeks they're coming and there you are. It's Razor.
Yeah.
As if he was saying, this is the fuck you to the fans. It's not the real Razor, it's the fake Razor.
Yeah, you might have a point there. But, you listen to Bruce Pritchard talk about this now, and he gets upset when Conrad says fake Razor and fake Diesel.
Well, of course he does.
He treats it like it was real, like, no, these are the characters, Conrad. These aren't fake. Yeah, Jim Ross, I mean, he's cutting a heel promo, but he comes off as a babyface for a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's really just, it's not good because it's a little too confusing. It did come off as very whiny and bitchy though, and I think that helped a little bit make it more of a heel promo, but he's not a heel. We know who Jim Ross is. He's not a heel. He's the best play-by-play commentator ever, as a babyface. So it's ridiculous.
First, I guess before this segment, we had the Paul Bearer and Mankind vignette in the graveyard, and a great vignette again, and it definitely was the same graveyard, or at least they wanted us to believe that based on, at the end, Paul Bearer points and says, there it is! They found the spot that Undertaker plunged the shovel into the ground, and I loved Mankind. He picked up the clump of dirt and sniffed it. Deranged. He's so deranged. But great vignette out of both Paul Bearer and Mankind and Undertaker. The stuff with JR, I agree, Joe. It was very interesting, the topics that he was talking about here, especially later, as we have heard, these are things that still grind his gears. That was pretty cool, but everything else about this was not. You could tell JR just wasn't comfortable trying to play the heel. And then this Razor bullshit that they've been leading up to for 2 months now, all of that we could have done without, and it was just a big waste of time. Another interesting thing that, Joe, you did mention it, but he specifically says Vince McMahon is the owner of the WWF. He uses those words. And right. I know we have talked before about a couple spots where someone implied or maybe in passing mentioned it, but, this is the first time he's being flat out called, you're the owner and I'm blaming you for this. So that was kind of interesting, but yeah, just a real letdown. If you could put your mind back to that mindset and you're just a 12 or 13-year-old boy, you probably thought Razor and Diesel was coming back.
Yeah, right.
This is what you were given. So that would have been quite the disappointment.
Yeah, this whole thing was just, I don't know, just didn't feel right on a lot of different levels. I can completely, not just because I personally have heard it, all three of us, and probably many, many of our listeners have heard it. I can hear JR bitching and whining in a normal indoor voice. I think where it becomes unnatural is JR yelling while he's bitching and whining. I think that's what the real difference is here.
Yeah.
JR being red-assed isn't anything new.
I think it went on a little bit too long, too. I think he was in the ring speaking for a little bit too long.
Yeah, and the teasers on him, too. Can we get to this interview already?
Right.
No, don't go to commercial. That was just milking it way too hard, way too long. All right. Well, as I said, that was the end of our episode, so let's take it on over now to highlights and lowlights. Ryan, please, why don't you go first?
It was a bit of a struggle to find a highlight this week. I'm going to go with the graveyard vignettes, both The Undertaker and Paul Bearer and Mankind's. The production value and the furthering of this story, it was all on point. And on a weak episode of Raw like this, that's the best I can come up with for a highlight. Low light, man, a sea of choices here. I went with the very forgettable tag team belt, or I guess not belt, the tag team match. We spent the whole 4 minutes talking about everything but the new tag team champs. We spent more time talking about the manager situation than we did about the Bulldog and Owen winning the belts. Definitely the low light there.
Yeah, for me, this entire episode was just not very good, and it just really exposes the obsession with the competition.
Yeah.
I mean, they do the Razor and Diesel stuff. They're getting ECW involved to kind of like gang up on the competition. They are exposing Jeff Jarrett, who just signed with the competition. It's unbelievable how obsessed they were with the competition, and it's just obvious because they moved the Intercontinental Championship match to this Raw instead of the pay-per-view so they could try to get a rating boost. They started the show with it, and then they do the Diesel Razor stuff at the end. Clearly, you can tell they're trying to get a ratings boost and using their competition to do it. So all of that stuff is a low light for me. My highlight is going to be, it's not really his work on this episode, but just the spotlighting on Chris Candido. This is his last match in the WWF. Unfortunately, it wasn't a good one, but he was a great wrestler and gone way too soon.
Yeah, I was pretty broad with my picks here. My highlight, vignettes from Undertaker and Mankind, for most of the same reasons that you said, Ryan. I mean, it's a very hard episode to find very many high points in, with those being the only logical pick for me. And my low light, I just had to go with almost everything else in this episode because there were just so many things to choose from. I couldn't pick just one. The whole thing was just
bit of a stinker.
Kind of a bust, unfortunately. So, Joseph, do you have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around September 23rd, 1996 for us?
Yeah, I'm trying to find some more information about this ECW collaboration, but there's not a lot of information from Dave Meltzer, but he is noting that it is being done to try to spike the ratings and try to go after WCW a little bit. But right now it's not happening. I mean, even this episode of Raw, they did a 2.0 and Nitro did a 3.4. So
Jesus,
we're in that 83 weeks time period. Yeah, Raw's just getting their ass kicked. There are rumors that Jake Roberts is going to be pulled off the road and working full-time in the WWF office later this year. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Dave Meltzer gave some ratings on tonight's matches, I guess because it was a live show. He gave the Intercontinental title match between Farouk and Marc Mero 2 3/4 stars.
Ugh.
He said that Mero did a lot of good stuff in this match, but when Farouk was on top, the match slowed down.
Okay.
The Bodydonnas had their final match with that gimmick. He gave that match with Owen and Davey Boy 2 3/4 stars.
What match was he watching that he even got enough time to give a fucking rating to?
I don't know. He must have been eating too many Reese's Cups and Kit Kats or something.
If he was eating anything, he would have missed the match.
He's in the sweetest place on earth, Ryan. He gave Hunter Hurst Helmsley versus the Stalker 1 star. He said the match was not good. That's what he said. It was not good.
Okay.
He did say the Stalker works too lethargic for today's fast-paced style.
Too much protein.
And last piece of news here is apparently Sable actually hit Sonny in the eye during their slap fight. I guess I think they call that a potato in the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sonny was originally supposed to beat up Sable, but Marc Mero wouldn't go for that. It doesn't work for me, brother, which caused some backstage heat between Marc Mero and Sonny. So some tension here building between Sonny and Sable, so that's exciting.
Who hasn't had some backstage action with Sonny?
Oh, my. Oh,
yep.
my.
Oh, my.
And that is all.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. Illuminating as always. And let's just take a brief moment to say, fuck Dave Meltzer. What the fuck, man? Like, come on, Dave. What the fuck?
And then he'll give great matches. That was a -2 star.
Yeah, I'm taking off a quarter.
Well, that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us, WRASSLINRAW, just to add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and let your friends know how much cooler they would be if they became Rawheads like you and me. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw that aired on September 30th, 1996, with matches featuring Jake Roberts, the Grimm Twins, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.